On the channel a couple of weeks ago, I made a short video asking for your suggestions for watches to feature on a spinning wheel. When I spin it, whatever it lands on, I would buy and review. I am in the process of making that review at the moment, but for clarity, I just want you to know that this isn't it. The premise here is something slightly different. As you can imagine, I spend an inordinate amount of time looking at watches. And recently I stumbled across an offer on the Xeric store page, a mystery quartz watch from their collection, back catalogue or prototype ranges for $189, with whatever you get guaranteed to be worth somewhere above $189 but below $350. For a moment I questioned who would be willing to take up such an offer, given how diverse the watches that could feature actually are. But then reality came calling and I thought to myself, this is actually a pretty fun idea for a video. One generous Valentine's Day present from my wife later, and here we are with a mystery watch box from Xeric to review. With all that said, let's get into the video. Before we find out what I got, I think a good place to start is by having a look at the possibilities. It's impossible to fully quantify them all, as there is the potential to get working prototypes which have never actually been listed for purchase. Realistically, looking at the current listing on the website, it would appear that you're far more likely to get either a halograph chrono or a NASA TRAPPIST model than anything else, in any one of a wide range of colorways for either model. This thinking is supported by a number of review posts from confirmed buyers, where the majority of images posted are of one of these two model families. I was actually given this watch about 5 minutes before I was due to head to the airport, and so had to open it in a bit of a hurry. The footage you're seeing is therefore pretty messy, and I didn't get a chance to record any kind of live reaction. I feel like a lot of that kind of reaction content is just for show anyway, but I will admit I did have a bit of a buzz about seeing what was inside. I tried to think about it, and I don't think I've bought something without knowing what I was getting since I was about 13 opening Pokemon card packs, though I will admit to being a bit addicted to random loot drops in Diablo 2 to this day. That's another story entirely though. Back to the watch, and I have to say the cynic in me kind of expected this outcome. This is the Halograph 2 Chrono Oxblood Sand colorway, which at the time of writing is the second cheapest watch available on the Xeric store. Now, having said that, at $189, the mystery box is still $60 less than you would pay to buy this watch outright, even with discounts applied. So it does represent really good value if you're happy with the lowest priced and indeed most probable outcome. I am personally not one for gambling, but in this case I do think it makes a fair bit of sense. But to really understand that sentiment, it's important to understand Xeric as a brand. Essentially, they make watches that look to tell the time in unique and interesting ways. Established off the back of a Kickstarter campaign in 2013, every watch they make requires a bit of thought to tell the time with initially, and this is supported by a range of bold colorways to really make them talking point pieces. If you're familiar with the work of MB&F, think of Xeric as the affordable everyman equivalent, and you won't be a million miles away. I think that little backstory is relevant to the idea of buying a mystery watch, as regardless of what you get, it is going to be interesting. Having said that though, as a brief aside, I do think that the automatic watches that Xeric produce are a clear step above their quartz variants. I'm particularly fond of the Wandering Hour and Tumbler models, but you'd probably expect that as there is a pretty noticeable jump in price as well. If that is something that interests you though, they do also offer some more expensive mystery boxes, priced at $300 for an automatic and $750 for a Wandering Hour. Back to the Halograph 2 Chrono, while I couldn't find any confirmed sources to verify what I'm saying here, My assumption is that the halo part of the name comes from the rings that are used to frame the display of the time. There are 4 in total, each of which is mounted on an unbalanced hand. 2 rings for the hour hand and 2 rings for the minutes. Sadly, not 1 ring to rule them all though. But my version does have a standard ticking second hand. Anyway, across the top of the dial are 4 tracks, 2 for hours and again 2 for minutes. To read the time, you only look at the 2 rings that are currently on top of the tracks. Practically, it means that you only have to look at the top half of the dial to be able to tell the time. But it does make for a very busy dial, which isn't going to be to everyone's tastes. The freed up bottom half of the dial is used to provide 3 chronograph subdials, but I have to be honest and say they're basically there for aesthetic balance. While this is a functional and accurate chronograph movement, a Miyota JS50, the subdials are designed with ray circle lines, but are small, have no numerals and can be obscured by the hour and minute hand halos. I do think that it's a worthy inclusion to have the complication, as it provides some visual balance to the piece, but as far as timing something goes, this just isn't really it. I would add though, I do like the style of pusher that they've used. They're grippy, functional and sleeker than the traditional design. The only thing that I think could have been even nicer with them is if they were slightly curved to fit in with the circular design of the piece. While this wouldn't necessarily have been the colourway for this watch that I would personally have chosen given the choice, I do think there is a fair bit to like here with this model. The quality of the materials and finishing is genuinely really impressive. This has superluminova, AR coated sapphire crystal, stainless steel construction, and my favourite little addition, an anodised aluminium accent ring around the outside of the watch, which helps to reinforce the colourway of the piece. I also think that the decision to go for a lugless design really helps to drive home the idea that this is an unusual timepiece. One potential issue with this is that the whole thing is so unconventional in the way that it looks, wears and tells the time that I think it might have a bit of a Marmite effect. You're either going to love this or hate it. For me personally, the one aspect that I would think about adjusting is the strap. The model is called Oxblood Sand, so the coloration makes sense in that regard. But I think leaning even more into that deep red with a matching strap would really make this have quite a gothic feeling to it. I'll be honest though, after some deliberation, I've decided that I'm not going to be keeping this watch in my collection. I can see the appeal of telling the time in interesting ways, but the colourway and design of this particular Halograph 2 doesn't quite do it for me. And of all the different ways that Xeric has of delivering the time to your eyes, this is perhaps my least favourite. It has some neat features to it for sure, and I think it's a pretty solid proposition at this price point. But I'm currently saving for a bigger purchase in 2025, so this gets to become another one of the worryingly long list of watches that I've asked my wife to buy for me, but then sold on. Don't worry, she's almost come to expect it at this point. I think she's just happy that I'm easy to buy for, to be honest. The way I see it, this piece contributes towards something bigger, and I've had great fun making this video, so I think it's a pretty good present all things considered. As for the proposition of buying a mystery watch box in general, I think it works well for a brand like Xeric, and if all you wanted was a watch that tells the time in an interesting way, this represents really good value for money. Clearly it isn't going to be something that everyone can get on board with, but it doesn't have to appeal to everyone to be a success. Despite not keeping the watch, I would be genuinely surprised if this is my one and only Xeric. The quality of the watch itself really impressed me. This just wasn't the one for me. Let me know your thoughts on this piece in the comments section down below. I'd also love to hear from you if you've had any other experiences with Xeric as a brand. As ever, thank you for your time. If you've enjoyed what you've seen or found it informative, consider dropping the video a like and subscribing for more content like this in future.